All right, so we're gonna look at some vocal processing. This is from a song called Suraksitsu, which means I'm safe in Nepali. We got a nice female vocal to work with. Her name is Erica. She did a great job. So yeah, we'll take a listen.
मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने ती आँखा कति असल छ मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने ती
All right, so let's start by soloing it. I'll zoom in a little here so you can see the waveforms. And then the channel strip setting will be here on the left. Okay, so let's take everything off. This is what it sounds like raw.
मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने ती
Actually, that still has reverb. Let's take that off.
मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने ती आँखा कति असल छ
All right, so you can hear it's pretty low. It's kind of dark sounding. It was recorded with a Shure SM7B. So the first thing I usually do is do the SSL channel strip.
मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने
So there's two main things that I do here. The first one, I always do this low pass filter just to get rid of a lot of the low end content that I don't want. Now this varies on like each person and each singer. Usually for females, you can cut it a little bit higher, around 300, depending on her voice. For guys, usually I do it a little bit around 200, in between 200 and 120, depending on the tonality of the voice.
मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने ती
You can hear it just kind of cuts out some of that low end. Around here, let's see, I added around, looks like 12K, about 5 decibels to give it that brightness. And then it looks like I cut a little bit above this 300 low pass, so maybe 350, or I cut a little bit more just to shape the vocal.
मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने
So here's an A-B.
मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने ती
So it's starting to take shape. Next step, here's a little bit more. It's almost like I just re-emphasized that same type of EQ.
मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने ती
Cutting a little bit of this 200 and a couple dips here, and then boosting some of the sibilants.
मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने ती
All right, after that, I added compression. Oh, and in the first step too, there's also compression.
मलाई
You can see it activated here.
मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने ती
It's real light just to kind of add a little bit of compression before we do some EQing. This is where I squashed it a little bit more.
मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने ती आँखा कति असल छ
So it's not too strong yet. And here's another API 2500 I always use on vocals just because it sounds really nice. So I'll keep the signal flow going from left to right here. So after this Renaissance compressor, I do this API 2500.
मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने ती आँखा कति असल छ
So it's really only catching like the syllable, this really high that kind of stuff. Just taming that a little bit. The multiband compression, I went through a couple of the presets here, upright bass, clarity, and tone. This really shaped it a lot, so you can hear the difference here.
मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने ती आँखा कति असल छ
So still just trying to control some of the super high end, adding a lot in this, 1K to about 10K. This is where a lot of that throaty sound comes from. I'm really trying to minimize in between 200 to 500 because that's kind of mud, and especially for a female vocal, we don't need that. And then boosting a little bit on the bottom just to give it, some of what's lost down here.
mulai sundar dekhne ती आँखा कति असल छ
Then to tame this the sibilants, this is just a de-esser.
mulai sundar
So you can see the attenuation is activated only on the, when she does a hard S sound.
mulai sundar dekhne
Here's without it.
mulai sundar dekhne mulai sundar dekhne ती आँखा कति असल
So on that asulta, it really tames that a lot here.
आँखा कति असल
You can hear it really ducking there, which is exactly what we want. This is a vocal rider, so this kind of does some live compression.
आँखा कति असल छ
So the vocal rider is nice. Usually I do that at the end, because there's different volume as she sings at different parts and different parts of the song. But this is, it's like putting a fake hand here, riding up and down on the vocals. So you can set your target range and the sensitivity.
mulai sundar dekhne ती
So it kind of automatically senses, when it needs to boost and come down. So that's really helpful. And the last thing was just a little bit of pitch correction.
mulai sundar dekhne ती
So that's with the pitch correction. This is without it.
mulai sundar dekhne ती
Here's with.
mulai sundar dekhne ती
So it's just to help out a little bit. Doesn't need a lot. Okay, last two things. Now to create the space, this is where the actual sound is created to make it fit well in the mix. The first thing is the reverb. So what we did was we went with the R verb here. There's an EQ on it. There's compression and noise gate. Okay, so let's listen to this.
mulai sundar dekhne
You know what I like to do a lot is actually listen to the reverb by itself. And, if you create a beautiful sounding reverb that you can listen to by itself, it's usually going to sound pretty good. So you can hear the pianos and the drums in there a little bit. But that's how I created this reverb. Was I went in there and I listened to it by itself, because then when you hear it with everything else.
mulai sundar dekhne ती
And so I rolled off the low ends because this would be mud, right? When the kick and the bass comes in, we don't need the reverb actually to have any of this. I boosted the highs a little bit.
mulai sundar dekhne ती
It actually looks like the compressor's not even doing anything there. So that was, maybe I wanted to compress it, but I felt like I didn't need it. So that's the reverb on there.
mulai sundar dekhne ती
Now the next most important thing is the delay. This is a Waves H delay. I saw this used a lot in Vegas. That's where I really fell in love with it. It's just a fantastic delay.
mulai sundar dekhne ती
So if you listen to what's actually going on here, this I think this is the key to making this reverb sound really good here is this high pass, low pass. You can set the EQ range that you want that delay to sound. So usually I keep it kind of in this range between what is this 400. I set it to 413 to 3K here. So it's that mid range, right, where you're still hearing it pretty clearly, but it's not full frequency. You definitely don't want full frequency, and for all those delays, you definitely don't want any low end, and it's gonna fill up that space really nicely.
मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने ती
And then the last little thing is so I have the main vocal going into the reverb, right? This reverb. But then I sent the delay. I also sent that into the same reverb. So the delay is not only, delaying off here, the delay, since it has that reverb on it, it sounds like it's echoing through the same room that the piano and the drums and all the other instruments are in. So I think that really helps, and it helps create the air and the space that we're going for.
मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने ती
So right there, you can hear the delay kind of dry, as there's some space here.
ती
Right, so that was dry. Now when you put reverb on that delay,
ती
it just adds a little bit,
ती
as opposed to this.
ती
Here it is again.
ती
It really sends it back, makes that room feel nice and big. So when you mix it with everything else, you get this nice big open sound.
मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने ती आँखा कति असल छ मलाई सुन्दर देख्ने ती
All right, so that's pretty much it. Hope that's helpful. That's just one style of doing vocals, and this is my kind of basic channel strip. SSL, Pro Q, EQ. You can use any EQs, really. Compression, multiband compression, de-esser, vocal writer, or this is basically another compressor, and then maybe if it needs it, a little bit of pitch correction. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So that wraps it up.